Independence doesn't usually return all at once. It comes back one activity at a time until, almost without realizing it, you're spending more time thinking about your plans than your knee. Are you ready to get back to what you love after knee replacement? The Total Knee Success Podcast is your trusted guide with practical tips, evidence-based strategies, and no fluff. It's not personal medical advice, just solid education to help you manage pain, regain mobility, and get back to living the life you love. Let's dive in. Welcome back to the Total Knee Success Podcast. I'm Michelle. In the last episode, we talked about the comparison trap after knee replacement. If you found yourself comparing your knee to your sisters, your pickleball partners, or someone in an online group who claims they were doing cartwheels a week after surgery, I encourage you to go back and listen to episode 86. Comparing your progress to someone else's can leave you feeling behind even when you're making excellent progress for your own situation. By the end of this episode, you'll have a clearer understanding of the functional changes that tell you far more about your progress than the calendar ever can. Today, we're shifting the focus from timelines to function. It's easy to become focused on how many weeks or months it's been since surgery, but the calendar only tells you how much time has passed. It doesn't tell you whether you're walking with a smoother gait, climbing stairs with greater confidence, sleeping more comfortably, getting out of the house more often, or handling everyday activities with less effort. Your surgeon's timeline is important. Tissue healing is important. Following your precautions, it's important too. But those dates don't tell the whole story. Real progress is measured by what you're able to do in your daily life. Today, I want to share 5 signs I look for that tell me someone is making meaningful progress after knee replacement. This isn't a complete list because everyone's goals are different. Your priorities may include gardening, golfing, traveling, returning to work, attending church, caring for a spouse, playing with your grandchildren, or simply getting through a normal day without your knee demanding all of your attention. Even so, these 5 signs come up again and again because they influence everyday life: walking, climbing stairs, sleeping, daily activities, and independence. The first sign I look for is walking better, not simply walking without an assistive device. That's an important distinction. Many people are eager to put the walker or cane away as quickly as possible, and I completely understand why. Nobody really wants to use an assistive device for an extended period of time. Rather than focusing only on when the walker or cane goes away, I encourage you to notice how your walking is changing. Maybe your stride is becoming a little more even. You may find yourself protecting your surgical leg a little less as you walk. You might also notice that you can walk a little farther before you need to stop. Those are the kinds of changes I like to see because they tell us your walking pattern is improving and probably getting more efficient. Sometimes people are surprised when I encourage them to keep using the cane a little longer. They worry it's holding them back. In reality, the right assistive device, used at the right time, can help you practice a better walking pattern instead of reinforcing a limp. If you're taking thousands of steps each day with a limp simply to avoid using a cane, that walking pattern can become more difficult to change later on. Every step is another opportunity to practice walking well. The more often you repeat a smoother, more natural walking pattern, the more likely it is to become your normal way of walking. One encouraging finding from recent research is that improvements in physical function continue well beyond the earliest weeks after knee replacement. That's important because many people expect the biggest gains to happen right away. In reality, walking quality, endurance, and everyday function often continue improving over the months that follow. That's why I encourage people to pay attention to what they're able to do instead of measuring progress only by the calendar. If you've noticed that your walking feels a little smoother than it did a few weeks ago, take a moment to recognize that progress. These changes may seem small while you're living through them. They're often the building blocks for returning to the activities that matter most to you. If walking is one of the areas you'd like to improve, my book, Walking Like Yourself Again After Knee Replacement, goes into more detail about some practical strategies that many people find helpful as they rebuild a smoother, more natural walking pattern. I'll go ahead and leave a link in the show notes. The second sign is climbing stairs with greater ease. For many people, stairs serve as a measuring stick for progress. They can walk around the house fairly comfortably, but then they reach a flight of stairs and they're reminded that their strength isn't quite where they want it to be. That's completely normal. Early on, your therapist may teach you to lead with one leg going up and the other coming down. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's totally appropriate. It's a safe strategy while your strength and confidence are still developing. As time goes on, improving on stairs usually isn't something that just happens. It takes consistent practice, and just as importantly, it takes building strength, especially in your quadriceps muscle group. That's one reason those strengthening exercises continue to be so important, even after you're starting to feel better. As your strength improves, you'll often notice that you're relying a little less on the handrail or climbing the stairs with a little more confidence than you did a few weeks earlier. Those changes don't happen by accident. They're the result of the work you've been putting in. One day, you may realize you carried a cup of coffee upstairs without thinking about every step. Another day, you might notice that you reached the top of the stairs before remembering to hold the handrail. Those moments do sometimes pass unnoticed, even though they're excellent examples of functional progress. They're signs that your strength is beginning to show up during everyday life, rather than only during your exercise program. That's one reason I encourage people to look beyond the calendar. Ask yourself what feels a little easier today than it did a month ago. Often the answer isn't found in the number of weeks since surgery. It's found in the way you move through your day. That's what functional progress often looks like. It isn't always a giant leap. More often, it's a series of small improvements that gradually become your new normal. The third sign I look for is better sleep. Sleep can be one of the most frustrating parts of the first several weeks after knee replacement. Finding a comfortable position can feel almost impossible at times. You finally drift off, only to wake up because your knee is stiff, sore, or simply refuses to let you settle in. That's why I pay attention when someone tells me they're sleeping a little longer before waking up, needing fewer pillows to get comfortable, or making it through the night more often than they used to. Those changes don't show up on an X-ray, and they won't necessarily be measured during a therapy visit, but they often change how your entire day feels. Better sleep usually has a ripple effect. You have more energy for your exercises. You're better able to concentrate. Everyday tasks don't feel quite as overwhelming because you're no longer starting every morning completely exhausted. Sleep rarely improves in a perfectly straight line. You may have a few good nights followed by one that feels like a step backward. That's normal and frankly quite common after knee replacement. Instead of judging your sleep by a single night, notice the overall pattern. Are the good nights becoming a little more frequent? Are you finding it easier to get in a comfortable position? Those gradual changes often tell a much more encouraging story than any one difficult night ever could. The fourth sign is returning to your everyday activities. When people think about measuring progress, they often focus on their exercise program, and that's certainly important. But I'm just as interested in what happens during the other 23 hours of your day. Are you standing long enough to prepare a meal without needing to sit down? Maybe you're walking through the grocery store without searching for the nearest bench. After running a few errands, do you still have enough energy to enjoy the rest of your afternoon? These are all signs that are progress. These are all the moments that tell the real story. They're the activities that give shape to your day, and they're often the first places people notice meaningful changes. One day you realize you've emptied the dishwasher without thinking about your knee. Another day you carry the laundry basket down the hall and notice it wasn't nearly as difficult as it used to be. Maybe you spend an afternoon shopping, meeting a friend for lunch, or enjoying an evening with your family without your knee dominating every decision you make. Those moments are important because likely they're the reason you had surgery in the first place. Very few people tell me their goal is to bend their knee to a certain number of degrees. They tell me they want to get back to living their lives. That's why I pay so much attention to everyday activities. They're often a better reflection of meaningful progress than any single measurement I record in the clinic. As rehabilitation programs have become more patient-centered, which is really a good thing, we're seeing greater emphasis on helping people return to the activities that are most important to them, rather than measuring success only by a single milestone alone. Your goals may not look exactly like someone else's, and that's perfectly appropriate. The fifth sign is growing independence. This is where all the other signs begin to come together. At first, you may need help with simple tasks. Someone drives you to appointments. They carry groceries into the house or help with chores that normally wouldn't require a second thought. That's a normal part of the process. As your strength, endurance, and confidence continue to improve, the need for help gradually becomes less frequent. Once you've been cleared to drive by your surgeon, you begin driving again. You feel comfortable meeting a friend for lunch. You go to church or take a shopping trip or spend an afternoon with your grandchildren, or enjoy an outing without wondering whether your knee will limit everything you plan to do. Independence doesn't usually return all at once. It comes back one activity at a time until, almost without realizing it, you're spending more time thinking about your plans than your knee. One of the reasons I like to look at these 5 signs is because they remind us that progress isn't defined by a date on the calendar. 2 people who are 8 weeks after surgery may have very different experiences, and that doesn't automatically mean one is succeeding while the other one is falling behind. Everyone is individual. What tells a more meaningful story is how your everyday life is changing. Are you moving with better quality? Are ordinary activities becoming easier? And are you beginning to participate in more of the life that you enjoy? Your knee replacement isn't a race against the calendar, although I'm sure it feels like it at times. It's a gradual return to the activities that make up your everyday life. The calendar tells you how much time has passed. These 5 signs can help tell how your life is changing. When you begin paying attention to those changes, you may notice progress that had been there all along. If you'd like some practical tips, research updates, and encouragement delivered straight to your inbox, I'd love to have you join the Total Knee Success Insider newsletter. You'll find a link in today's show notes. In our next episode, we'll build on today's conversation by exploring what happens when progress seems to slow down. Does that sound like something that's familiar to you? We'll talk about why plateaus are a normal part of the process, what may contribute to them, and how to recognize the difference between a temporary slowdown and a reason to reach out to your healthcare team. Thanks for joining me. I'm Michelle, and this has been the Total Knee Success Podcast. This podcast is for educational purposes only. Discover more at TotalKneeSuccess.com, and be sure to subscribe and share, because every step forward takes you closer to living the life you love.